How food addiction traumatized, then transformed a life. Next. Welcome to the Stan Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. For most of his young life, Michael Prager was burdened with obesity. He weighed in at one point at 365 pounds. The weight traumatized, then ultimately transformed Prager. He credits intensive counseling, a spiritual reawakening, and a healthier lifestyle with helping him shed 165 pounds. 20 years later, Prager remains fit and virtually fat-free today. Michael Prager, author of the book Fat Boy, Thin Man, is in the studio to tell his story. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Former colleague back in the day, 20 years ago, known as Marv's and copy editor. But this is a powerful book. This is a book sort of a transformation, but why do the book? You went through this sort of, I guess, horrifying experience. What was the defining moment where you said, you know what, I got to write this down?
The defining moment was actually when I became affiliated with a group called the Food Addiction Institute. It's based in Sarasota, Florida. And I became part of a subgroup of the group that was forming this, and we decided we wanted to bring the questions and the what we think are the answers about food addiction to a general audience. And they asked me to write 10 to 15 pages that was going to be part of one chapter of this book that we were conceiving. And when I got to page 22 and knew I hadn't even really gotten started, I knew I really wanted to share. And really it's, I like to say to people that I've lost 65 pounds depending on the day, and maintaining it for 20 years, and I didn't go on a diet and I didn't have weight loss surgery. And if we were to ask any random group of people, what do you do to lose weight? They'd say, go on a diet or have weight loss surgery. And since my experience wasn't part of that, I felt that I had something that could help people. And that's what I'm doing, is trying to share what happened with me with others so that they can consider whether they think it could work for them too.
And I want to get into that because you make very clear that this is not about a diet. Really, it's about you discovering who you were. But before we get there, I want to talk about growing up being obese as a young child. Self-esteem issues. Talk about that when you grew up realizing that being fat is an issue.
Yeah. I can't say I know exactly when it hit me that I was different and that it was not in a good way. But I remember like at 9 or 10 years old being in line at a summer camp, and one of the other kids took his belly. He wasn't self-conscious. Maybe he wasn't as heavy. I don't really, but he took his belly and he pushed it in so that you couldn't see his belly button anymore. And then a couple kids turned to me and said, you do that. And I refused, and I was mortified, and it only was downhill from there. I did not like being notable for my size, and yet the only way out of that was to reduce my size, and it took me another 30 years, 25 years before I became able to do something about it.
How do these folks treat you? Family, women, and men in that category. How do, when you're obese, do you find a family were they enablers for you? And then we'll talk about women and men.
Perhaps somewhat. It's hard to live in any family group and not be helping each other do the things that people do. But I would say that, certainly my parents were aware of the fact that I was overweight. They weren't happy with it. I don't think they blamed me. I think they blamed me as much as they blamed themselves.
Let's take a look at some pictures of you were older and younger.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you were saying they didn't blame.
It was just bad news. Nobody wanted that. I didn't want it, and they didn't want it for me, and they sent me to fat camps. I remember the first diet my mother put me on, I was maybe 10 years old. It was a Stillman diet where you're supposed to drink 8-ounce glasses of water every day, and she put toothpicks on this side of the sink and said, every time you have one of those 8-ounce tumblers of water, I want you to move the toothpick over. So that was how I was supposed to keep track. I never once did that.
Too much thinking, right? Too much work involved in that, right?
Well, and then the fat camp 3 years in a row, and all sorts of other things that they tried to help me. But the problem was that I wasn't asking for help. I was being, quote unquote, and I mean this in a soft way, accused of having done something wrong, and therefore you must go do something to fix it. And and that led me to, well, I can't really say it didn't work for me.
Right.
And,
well, 'cause you had lost weight multiple times. You had lost 100+ pounds multiple times. So you've shown the discipline to do that, right? But it didn't stick, so...
Well, that's true. That really didn't start until I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
Another example of the support that my parents were willing to give me. A family friend said, I know a diet doctor, and I'm willing, and you couldn't get to see...
A diet doctor?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's in New York, and you couldn't get in to see him for the next year, but you know me, and I will get you in if you want to go. So my parents were willing to sign me out of school for a day at a time and to put me on the plane to go down to New York, take a cab to East 56th Street in Manhattan and see this doctor. His name was Dr. Atkins.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, the famous Dr. Atkins.
That's right. It was called the Vogue diet back then, or one of the magazines. That's how he started becoming famous. And it worked for me. I lost 130 pounds when I was a junior/senior in high school. The problem was that the minute I stopped having the willpower to continue on with this pretty strict regimen, I started gaining the weight back. And later, twice more, I returned to that diet because I know I could lose a lot of weight on it. The problem was that I couldn't keep the weight off.
Well, then you found, though, through counseling, according to your book, that it was something more internal, right?
Absolutely.
You had to figure out what was it about you that food became a drug. And you give a few analogies where, the Subway shop or the convenience store is your drug dealer.
That's right.
And you're the user.
That's right.
So you had to figure out what is compelling you to eat. That was your drug, and it was masking something. What was the food masking internally?
That's right. I was trying to fill a hole inside of me.
What was that hole? What was?
I would say, there's, it's not something you can see spiritually. I mean, surgically. So I can't say,
Right.
It looked like that, it was that big, and all that. But I feel it was a spiritual deficit. And
but was there something at home? When you look back, you say, okay, here are my issues. Maybe were there childhood issues? Were there relationship issues? Was there something compelling that you felt, you know what, this was sort of the root of me not feeling good about myself and compelling me to overeat, or it became a drug? Was there some seminal instant in your life that you felt that's what was the heart of all this?
Well, these are excellent questions, Stan, and the best answer I have for you is that I'm not really sure. Life is so complicated. We are all the products of nature and nurture, and all I know is that I reacted in a different way. I wanted more food than all the other kids did. I was willing to go to greater lengths to get it. I would I reveal the times that I stole from my mother's purse, or sometimes I'd take the money off that another party had left as a tip on the table before the waitress could get it. I later worked in a convenience store, a 7-Eleven type store, and I stole from the shelves and I stole from the register. And I was willing to go to
great lengths
to get food that other people weren't.
All right, I'm not a psychologist, but I want to pry a little bit more, because you weren't quite sure what compelled you to do it, but you found something to compel you to stop. So we're going to dig into both those some more and come back with more of the Stan Simpson Show. Michael Prager, who once weighed 365 pounds, talks more about the defining moment in his life when he said enough. You are watching the Stan Simpson Show. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Don't go away.